Hello, everyone. May we please take some seats and we will start celebrating Barbara.
Welcome everyone to the Morristown Unitarian Universalist Fellowship. Welcome to this day of memory and farewell. We have come here this afternoon to mark the passing and to celebrate the life of Barbara Sue May Nadolny. Before her death on December 20th, 2024, Barbara graced this world for 91 years, sharing her strength, her tenacity, her passion for learning, and her love for her family and friends. Although she was taken from us before we were ready to part with her, hers was a long and meaningful life filled with the natural beauty of her garden, good books like biographies and murder mysteries, camping trips with her kids, bird watching, travel to 6 continents, theater productions, fulfilling work as a teacher, and educational and environmental activism to help make the world around her a better place. And so as we gather today, let us celebrate Barbara's life together. Let it be gratitude more than sadness that brings us here. Gratitude that the gift of Barbara's life was full of moments of great joy, of beauty, of laughter, all wrapped up in love. And this afternoon, 2 of Barbara's grandchildren, Molly and Jacob, will light the chalice, which is the symbol of Barbara's Unitarian Universalist faith, as a memorial flame today for Barbara's life. As we gather today to honor the many gifts that Barbara brought to us and to the world, may her memory burn bright in our hearts. To Barbara and to all that she gave and all that she loved, we dedicate this service of memory and hope. And at this time, Barbara's granddaughter, Kari, will share an original poem in honor of her grandmother.
Thank you for coming. I wrote this poem, and it's called Every Day's a School Day. Summer camp at Audubon meant breakfast was cinnamon toast. Her sugar to cinnamon ratio was the one we craved the most. We'd tromp around her garden, searching for salamanders and worms, as she'd list off birds and plants in scientific terms. We played with Jaja's blocks, parcheesi, and croquet. We'd ask her to join, but Bocce doesn't play games, is what she'd say. Later on, my night school in Morristown gave us 2 nights a week to cook together, talk and laugh, and practice my massage technique. She never stopped pushing for us to keep learning. To her, being stagnant was very concerning. She encouraged our passions and held us accountable, ensuring we knew nothing was insurmountable. For her birthday one year, she told us, "No gifts for me, just memorize all the presidents since 1933. She pressed us to stay informed. "Turn on the debate," she'd insist. "Did you vote? Did you watch that speech?" There was nothing she missed. Well-traveled, pragmatic, independent, and educated, and for us to follow suit, she was surely dedicated. Whether it was her latest book, politics, family, or biology, the power in volunteering, parenting, or anthropology. She felt it her purpose to empower us all with knowledge and lessons, no topic too small. She was hilarious, intelligent, and unhinged in the best way, forever teaching us all every day is a school day.
Barbara's brother Ted will deliver this afternoon's eulogy.
Got to start by saying, wow, I didn't expect this beautiful, beautiful turnout. I'm Barbara's little brother. Yes, she was the older child in the family. We grew up in Buffalo, New York, with two wonderful parents that were able to keep up with all our shenanigans. The only problem being that early on, Barbara and I did not get along with each other. You may be aware of a TV program that's called Story Television. Its motto is, "Every moment tells a story." Well, I'd like to tell you a small story of my sister as I saw it. Barbara, whom I often call Barb, was almost 4 years older than me. And Dad had purchased a 2-story house near the city lines of Buffalo and Cheektowaga. And we lived there with our parents and our grandmother, who spoke no English. With 5 people and only 3 bedrooms, I was in the same room with Barb. When I turned 7, Dad fixed up the small room off the kitchen, and Barbara got a room to herself. But Aunt Jenny then moved in, and Barb got a roommate again, which she did not sit well with her at all. Being older, Barb was the smaller one, I'll have to admit that. So she always claimed. We would walk to school, which was almost 8 blocks from home. What kids walk to school nowadays? On top of that, Barb, a 3rd grader, took me, a kindergartner, to school each day. As I was smaller, she would usually put me down for anything I did wrong. The Mom and Dad did try to stop her from putting me down, to no avail. So I would try to get back at her in any way that I could. I would hide her things to get her annoyed. One time when she was home alone, I snuck back into the house and started to make quiet noises. I remember that she called from upstairs asking, "Who was there?" I wouldn't answer. She was afraid to come down, and ultimately I just sneaked out of the house, never let her know that I was there. We had to do the supper dishes together, and the washer often did it slowly, so the dryer had to wait, and often got annoyed, and we took turns doing that to each other. Our parents would sit in the living room and just laugh at it all. She was afraid of snakes, so often I brought them home with me to scare her. However, this did not really last. She once was in school in a science class when a teacher showing the class a 2-foot snake suddenly placed it right in her hands. She froze for a second, and that settled down. From that point on, she often carried a small snake in the pocket of her jacket. Can you believe that one? Our tormenting each other did one day come to an end, because she did the tormenting what I'm talking about, because she was always right, and I was always wrong, and I was smaller than her. She liked to slap me around, literally slap me around. So one time, she did something, and I refused, and she slapped me. But this time, I suddenly gave her a backhand right into her face, and that mark was there for 3 days. I hit her that hard. I was scolded, but that was the last time she ever put me down, and life started to get better between us. I can remember sitting around the radio with our parents. You know, this is before such a thing as TV, and we would sit there and listen on the radio to what's going on in the world. We did have a subscription to the classic comics. Do you remember that, the classic comics? They had all kinds of great, great stories, but we were not allowed to open the package that it came in. We had to wait for Dad to come home. He sat in his chair, and one on each side of him, he would read the whole thing to the 2 of us. Dad had an old farmhouse, which we all took part in bringing it up to date with new windows and a new roof. Can you picture Barb up on the roof helping Dad? If you go back there in that white contraption, there's some photographs. There's a picture of her right up there with my father. Each of us had various chores to do, and after working all day, and as the bathroom was not yet done in the building, we would often go to the nearby beach with Dad and clean up in the waters of Lake Erie. Beaches were a big thing for us, especially Crystal Beach. Anybody know what Crystal Beach was? Yeah, there's a few here. It was a beautiful park in Canada. In order to get there, we would take the bus, go downtown, get on the Canadiana, which sailed across Lake Erie, and we would be deposited on the dock there and go to the amusement park. At the end of the day, our folks would usually come up and bring us back home. Barb also liked to play the piano. We both went for lessons, but I did not do well. She, however, became quite good and played in high school concerts. As an aside, I'd like to tell you that I finally did get bigger than her, as in my freshman year of high school, I grew 9 inches in 9 months. Believe me, it was painful. I went to the same high school that Dad taught at, while Barb went to another high school. Barb then went to State Teachers College, where she took part in plays. And after the final performance one year, a great party was held at our house with about 35 members from the cast. It started about 11 o'clock in the evening and went on till about 2 in the afternoon the next day. But Mother and Dad were very surprised, as the house was left even cleaner than when they first came. All of them took part in really cleaning the place up. When I went to Rensselaer Polytechnic Institute, Barb would often call or write to me to say what was going on at home. She was the one who called me to tell me that Mom had a heart attack. It was months before I got home to really see Mom. And Barb excelled in school, always on the honor roll. I, however, flunked out of college and later had to work hard to get jobs that called for a degree or even a license. As you probably know, Barb was very headstrong. You know that? Once she got something in her mind, there was no changing it. She was very angry with one of our uncles, who never helped our mother in taking care of our grandmother, who unfortunately was really losing it. So one day, she read him off to the point that he refused to come to our house for many months. It was a long time before he ever spoke to her. Then she got married and moved to New Jersey to be with her husband, who just finished his Army requirements. Soon the children began to come, but each of them would come just after each one of ours. At one point, my mother went to see Barbara in New Jersey as Mary Beth was about to be born. But my daughter Sandy came on the same day, just hours before Mary Beth did. My aunt had to come to take care of Ken, who was teaching, and Mike was in school. Our relation became quite different with each other living in different states. We did often travel to see each other, mostly in the summer. Dad and I would often come to work on her house. Sometimes we would bring things like bed frames or other items, window frames. We really came to really build up the house. But on one visit to her house, she got me angrier than I gotta say that ever happened. She said that I was not to marry Dorothy, who sits here, saying that she did not have enough education. Well, some 65 years later had proved her very wrong. Barbara did make up after that. Both our families liked to travel, often on long trips. But on once there was a time that all her children and our children came, and we traveled to Canada to see the African animal forest. Can you picture my wife and I with 6 children, all under 10 years of age, all in one automobile? As we came through the toll gate of a big bridge in Hamilton, Ontario, we found that the driver ahead of us had apparently felt sorry and had paid our toll for us. However, the man at the Peace Bridge gave us a very strange look when we came through customs. Barbara built a new life after the separation, having to support the family while teaching here in Morristown. I must admit that we grew apart from each other, raising our own families, while living in different states. We would talk on the phone to keep up with things, but that was not really the best thing. Barb had some very different ideas about politics, and we often argued about them. At one time, she got so mad at me that she hung up, and I did not hear from her for many months. We then decided not to talk politics anymore. Those of you here could without a doubt be able to tell me more of her new life as you lived, worked, and saw each other more than I did. But I do know that each of us were proud of the way our children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren have turned out. We've often found ways to come together for that, and this has been a blessing for us and shows that we truly are family. For some reason, I have at times tried to write out my feelings of different things in poetry, and just like you heard one just shortly, I did this twice for Barb, usually for one of her birthdays. And I'd like to close by reading one of those poems, as I think it really sums up what I've said and felt here this day. It's entitled, "And I See Barbara There." I sat on the floor, held a train in my hands. She laughed in delight, and I saw Barbara there. We walked on to school. My milk it did fall, but she gave hers to me, and I saw Barbara there. A grad was I then to the class. She walked in and gave me the dad's watch, and I saw Barbara there. In white she did walk, the aisle it was long, to a man she came to, and I saw Barbara there. Away they did go to places not known, we came there to see, and I saw Barbara there. A house did they buy, the walls not too straight, but home it would be, and I saw Barbara there. 3 children she bore, most alone she did raise. The work was most hard, and I saw Barbara there. Other children she did teach in ways she did know. Her world she did show, and I saw Barbara there. A garden there grew, many plants spread all out. She cared well for them, and I saw Barbara there. The years they have passed, for her many they are. So much did she do, and I saw Barbara there. Not often are we there in person to touch, but in mind could I say, and I saw Barbara there. My sister, she is, one only she is, but with love I do say, and I see Barbara there. Thank you.
And now the family has invited other loved ones to share brief personal tributes to Barbara, and will our first speaker please come forward at this time?
Hello, everyone. My name is Rebecca. I'm Barbara's youngest daughter. I thank the fellowship for hosting this event, and I thank you, friends and family, for celebrating my mom today. One friend of my mom who could not be here today is Barbara Guilford. She lives in Oregon with where her son lives, and he has been my friend since kindergarten. I want to share a couple excerpts from a letter that Barbara Guilford wrote to me after Mom passed, because she knew my mom as a mother with us kids playing, and also as a work colleague. She says, "Your mom had so much curiosity that got passed down. Do you remember the computer? It was a large cardboard box with my brother Chris inside, and questions would be spoken or written down and put in a slot, and a voice inside would provide the answer. My sons were enthralled. That was just one example of playtime at the Nadolnys. Your mom managed everything and was a full-time teacher to boot. She took you on camping expeditions in the summer. She fostered academic excellence. I always marveled at her ability to manage all the aspects of maintaining a household and raising children. I never heard your mother complain, not about being a single mother, not about her students, the administrators, not about her precious children. For at least 2 summers, a group of us attended the Summer Institute at Lincoln Center. Your mother transported us in a van. It was such fun. And then we brought the arts back home to our students, including your mother's high school biology classes. After your mom had construction in her house, I remember the clothesline above her bed, but it had papers attached with clothespins, just another example of a creative solution to the piles of paper that most of us battled. I think your mother lived a fulfilling life and made a major contribution to so many students lucky enough to be in her classes. She was an unusual person, unique in her varied interests and an exemplar of courage, kindness, friendship, and generosity. Above all, she loved the 3 of you kids with her whole heart and did her absolute best always. Thank you, Barbara Guilford, and thank you, Barbara Nadolny, for being a quirky and amazing mother.
Well, hello, folks. My name is Joyce, and I've been a friend of Barbara's for over 40 years. But first, I want to say thank you to Barbara's children, especially to Christopher, and to Rebecca, and to Mary Beth for organizing us today and getting all of these wonderful people together. It's a very special event for me, and I've met people that I didn't know before who were important in Barbara's life, and especially Teddy. I've never met Teddy before. Barbara would talk to me all the time about Teddy and his wife and their wonderful travels. She would talk to me about her father in Buffalo, New York, and his wonderful carpentry skills. And I would enjoy the furniture and the items in Barbara's house. And it was a wonderful event for me to sit in those things that were handmade by her father. It was really special to me. So anyway, I said I met her over 45 years ago. That was through New Jersey Audubon. We both enrolled in a bird identification class. Those classes were held in the evenings, and then on Saturdays, we would go out on field trips. We found that most of the folks in those groups were people who were either in the sciences or in education. Barbara, of course, was in education. I was in the sciences. And we met, I would say, up to 30 to 40 really good people who we kept friendships with for over 40 years. We took, besides bird identification, we took botany classes, we took fern identification, winter tree identification, geology, fungus, mushrooms, and we would go out and enjoy all of these things. Some people were specialists in spotting birds, others knew their songs, others could identify them, other folks could see a wildflower where none of us could. And so we all worked as a group. And I know a lot of folks don't like to travel with groups. They like to go out by themselves. But we like to go with groups. So for us, Audubon was a wonderful, wonderful organization to belong to participate in. And in those groups, we met other folks in local nature clubs. And one of the persons that we traveled with and went birding with was Dr. Herman Bieber, who has passed, but he was an instigator in our international travels. He was a member of the Appalachian Mountain Club, and Barbara and I and these other folks, we went from Maine, New Hampshire, Massachusetts, Connecticut, New York State. We went on all Appalachian Mountain Club trails. We stayed at the top of Mount Washington in a hut where the winds were up to 60 miles an hour. And it was fascinating. And one of our friends was good at wildflowers and she could identify them. And we just all benefited from each other's skills. We also went on a graduate geology course to Hawaii. We visited all 4 islands. We learned about how they were formed. We walked across a crater that was hot under the foot. It actually melted the material under our sneakers, the plastic under our sneakers. And we saw wonderful birds, and we learned so much. Other trips with our groups went to Southeast Australia, to northern New Zealand, the best one actually was to Iceland. We went to Iceland, enjoyed it, and then took a plane and then 2 helicopters over to an isolated eastern Greenland village. At that time, no one really had visited there, and we were fortunate to see the first ship come in with supplies after the long winter. They fired off cannons. The locals were eating apples. Very small town. We went out on a ship. We went out and hooked onto an ice floe with a grapple hook. And I remember Barbara stretching out on her back on this ice floe and doing those angel things. And she thought this was, and I remember that was one of the things I remember most about her. She was just in heaven. She was just so thrilled to do that. And it made all of us so happy to see her enjoy this remote part of the world. There are other places that we went to. Many of you have seen them on the photographs there and the iPads and so forth. We went to Thailand for 3 weeks. We went to Brazil. We saw fabulous birds, unusual animals, absolutely fabulous. We went to Trinidad. We saw birds that live in caves. They're called oil birds. We saw bellbirds that make a sound like bonk. We've traveled so many places. We've joined so many, and I'm saying we have, because to me, she is present in my mind and my body. She is a person who is so special to me. She made me, as did New Jersey Audubon, what I am today. And I just thank her. I thank her family. I enjoy hearing about all their activities, the grandchildren, and with all of these travels, every single time we traveled, all she thought about was family. She said, wow, Christopher would love this because it's historical. He would enjoy it so much. Mary Beth would love this. Rebecca would love these instruments. I'll bring an instrument back to Rebecca. It was always family. Every place we went, whether it was Cape May or any local place, she would get things for her children, her grandchildren, and great-grandchildren. And she just loved her family. But I, who have no family at all, I felt part of that, and I understood what she stood for and how important education was to her. And she's left so many legacies, so many, and I just thank her for that. And she's with me today. After she passed, I put out a bird feeder garden, and I sit outside my garage, watch the birds, and I think of all the wonderful times I had with Barbara. And it pleases me. It makes me happy. It makes me comfortable. And what more could you ask for in a friend? Thank you, folks.
Good afternoon. My name is Erin Colfax, and I have known Barbara for the past 20 years. She was my friend and my professional mentor. We were both science teachers at Morristown High School. However, when Barbara retired, I was graduating high school. But several years later, I wound up teaching in Barbara's classroom. And it was this beautiful relationship that we had for 20 years, learning about science together. So today I'm going to speak a little bit about Barbara's contributions to the educational community at large, because they were legendary. She generated a community where people really didn't understand how far ahead she was. She believed in place-based education, and the Morris School District probably didn't even understand what she was doing at that time. Barbara, for over 25 years, led a hawk watch at Morristown High School. And today, I want to contribute 5 things to connect all of us, even though we're from different generations, that are all about Barbara. So the first thing I'd like to do is talk about this hawk watch and talk about birding. And if you notice, there's a few of us wearing binoculars as a contributing factor towards Barb. So she orchestrated and fueled a love of birds in the lives of not only faculty members, but students and members of the community. She participated with her students in an annual hawk watch where they documented the number of hawks passing over top of Morristown High School. I wasn't a student in her class, nor was I a colleague of Barbara's when this took place. But there's over 10 teachers here today who were participating at the high school as educators during that time. In fact, a recent Morristown High School retired teacher whose book got published 2 weeks ago spoke about Barbara's contributions to the greater school community. She was not a science teacher. This woman was an English teacher. But what Barbara cultivated in the community as a birder is what the high school and members of the associated area around Morristown had known her for. So in order to link us all together, I'd like to ask that the next time you are going outside and you grab that pair of binoculars, or you pick up a field guide, that you are thinking about Barbara Nadolny, because she fostered in so many people a love of birding. And even though I don't teach with Barbara and never had a chance to teach with Barbara, I taught with Barbara because I'm teaching the next generation of birders at my school. The second thing I'd like to ask of you, as we start to shift in the seasons, is gardening. So if you are somebody who's a plant lover, if you've called Barbara's home in the past, you know that her voicemail would always say she was outside in her garden. And I am the head gardener for the school that I teach at. And anytime I put on my gardening gloves this season, I'll be thinking about Barbara. And I'm going to ask you to do the same. That when you slip on those gardening gloves, or you walk into Home Depot or Lowe's or your local nursery, that you think about Barbara's love of plants. Additionally, Barbara wanted everybody to know about pollinating plants, and she wanted you to purchase native species. So Barbara was instrumental in getting multiple generations to purchase plants from the Great Swamp Watershed Association's plant sale, which is coming up this spring. Barbara would fill the hands of teachers and community members with literature about pollinator plants and their importance. So if you are at a garden center and you're making that decision between a native and non-native plant, I ask that you consider the native plant on behalf of Barbara. The third thing that might link us together is education. So Barbara and I had something very unique in common. I went to all 7 continents, and when I was going to continent number 7, a local news reporter wrote an article about my work with the community. That's actually when I first met Barbara, because she called me after reading an article in the newspaper. So the next time you pick up an old-fashioned newspaper, I'd like to ask that you think about Barbara Nadolny, because she would clip clippings, even though her vision started to fail, all the time to share them with people in the community. And she said, I just saw this article. The irony is she probably didn't see the article. She probably heard it on her CD player because of all of her books on CD, that each of us would have the pleasure of learning more about what she wanted us to hear about what was happening in science, in literature, in politics, or in the community at large. The next thing that might draw us together is procurement. So as many people know, if you'd been to Barbara's house over the years, Barbara had very elaborate collections. And those collections were documented in lots of journals. And if you are somebody who writes down what you collect, or maybe you have a grandson or a granddaughter that has a rock collection, I ask you that you honor those collections, because I have inherited 5 different collections from Barbara's family, and those collections mean everything to me, because I am a young scientist. I have inherited her seashell collection, so when that little kid comes up to you this summer and says, take a look at this shell, I ask you to please think about Barbara Nadolny, because she had shells and she had field guides to help people understand what was the organism that used this as their home. She would share with us about habitat. She would share with us the importance of understanding pH and understanding how the world at large's environment was influencing all of the organisms she had collected over the years. I most recently received Barbara's rock collection. And Barbara's rock collection, if you'd never seen it, is really awesome. In fact, there are some emeralds and there are small fragments within parts of the collection that she had procured from all the different seasons of her life. 2 weeks ago, I took that collection and started sharing it with kindergartners at the local school that I'm teaching at. And kids were fascinated and respectful of a 91-year-old's collection that she was sharing with their teacher, and they were getting a chance to see. So I had all of Barbara's microscopes, her hand lenses, and in the hands of kids who were 5 and 6 years old, all the way up to 8th grade, they were working with Barbara's rocks. So when you see that rocks collection that a little kid brings to you, please think about Barbara. Another really fascinating collection of Barbara's was fungus. And if you'd been to her home, she had boxes and boxes of cataloged fungus. And a few years ago, I left my position at Morristown High School, and I took a job out of passion, and Barbara was really excited that I was willing to take a risk to go to an eco-sustainability school. When I did, I inherited her fungus collection because we made a fairy mansion that was showcased last year at the New Jersey Climate Shift Conference. Barbara's collection was shared with the local students. It was shared with members of the State Department. It was shared with Tammy Murphy, who was trying to make sense of what's happening in New Jersey's climate. And what we did was we took this fungus collection and collection of bones that she had procured and turned it into a fairy mansion that now sits on the property of the school that I teach in. So the next time you pass a little fairy out and about in the woods, or maybe you're gonna take somebody on a fairy walk, think about Barbara Nadolny. Because Barbara didn't just influence students when she was a teacher, she's influencing generations of students in others' teacher lives. And that, I think, is what creates somebody's legacy. They're not just keeping information to themselves. They are somebody who is sharing and educating and growing someone else's passion. And that, to me, is Barbara Nadolny. The last one I want to share with you is about journaling. Mary Beth let me take some of her mother's journals, and seeing Barbara's beautiful handwriting, so diligently documenting species after species, to me is something that is going to become a lost art if we don't continue to get children to take their scientific notes. One of the reasons Barb has supported me so heavily is because I too believe in place-based education. At my school, most kids know I walk around with a set of binoculars or a hand lens in my pocket or a microscope that has a current slide that I just created. And Barbara would document these notes just like I document them. And now I'm trying to influence the next generation. Now in the Morristown area, there are children who know Barbara as Miss Barbara. Again, she never taught them, but I'm teaching them. And they know Miss Barbara because they have been playing with Miss Barbara's collections for the last several years. So anytime you see somebody who's out there in the field documenting a bird that they saw or writing down about their garden, telling us what is going to be coming into bloom in the month of April, or that ginkgo tree that she beloved and wanted to know on the high school property, is it still there? Did they cut it down? Barbara had it documented. So when you come across a young person that's still taking old-fashioned notes, working on their handwriting to kind of capture the moment, I ask you to think about Barbara Nadolny. So today, I hope that I just gave you a little bit of what Barbara has given to the greater school community here. I know for sure there's members from Audubon here, there's science teachers, business teachers, there's English teachers here, there's teachers from the business department. And if it wasn't for Barbara Nadolny, our days in the Morristown community would not be as interesting because she was passionate and she was complacent at times. But when you're in education, you have to have a voice. And Barbara had voice and Barbara had passion. So I thank you so much for letting me come and speak with you today. But I hope that when you look at those fairies or pick up a bird guide or hear the of the Cooper's hawk, you'll be thinking of Barbara Nadolny.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for coming. And man, we've had some wonderful speakers. Everybody's speaking so heartfelt, so much love. So, a while after my mom started losing her sight, she explained to me that she'd given a lot of thought about how she could still contribute now that she was less mobile and had lower vision. After so many years of working plant sales and setting up master gardener displays in libraries and working the register at Audubon Gift Shop, it was really important to her to keep on giving. She came up with the fact that she could still teach. She could still share her knowledge and experience. Now, we all know that my mom was apt to share her wisdom and advice with others, even when unsolicited. And this brings back memories. As kids, we had very limited TV viewing, but she would have mandatory viewing of shows like Nova. That's a science show, for those who don't know. And no pleading of last-minute homework could get us out of it. So yes, teaching was her passion. An example of how she continued teaching is for her 90th birthday, as Kari mentioned in her poem. She asked that all of us memorize the US presidents that were in office in her lifetime. And to her joy, Kari took this a step further and had her kids, Olivia and Ethan, learn and sing them to the tune of Happy Birthday. Even in the hospital in her last few days, my mom was instructing the nurses and doctors on her ideas of ways to communicate with a patient that could not speak. So I'd like to close with a quote from George Bernard Shaw,
which I feel describes her view on life. He says, "I am of the opinion that my life belongs to the whole community. And while I live, it is my privilege to do for it what I can. I want to be thoroughly used up when I die. For the harder I work, the more I live. I cherish life for its own sake. Life is no brief candle to me. It's a sort of splendid torch that I've got hold of for the moment, and I want to make it burn as brightly as possible before handing it off to future generations." Thank you.
Let us now enter into a moment of silence to lift up the memories, thoughts, or prayers of our own hearts. Today, we have said our goodbyes and shared our love for Barbara Nadolny, a unique and brilliant spark of life. From stardust she was formed, and we now commit her light to the stars to which she has returned, recognizing with deep reverence a life well lived. And at this time, I invite Molly and Jacob to come back up here to extinguish our chalice flame. And though we have extinguished this chalice, let us be confident that such goodness, such happiness, compassion, and love as Barbara's never touched the face of the earth without creating something eternal. Her bright spirit radiates still through our world and through our lives. Let us seek, therefore, to let our lives be her legacy, for her light is now ours to carry forward out into this world. May we celebrate Barbara's life in the lives we now lead, for we are now her honor and her memorial. All her best qualities we now carry forward as we are now her voice, her hands, and her heart. May peace be with Barbara as her spirit flies free with her family, friends, and all of those that she loved, and may peace at last be with us all. And we're going to continue the celebration of Barbara's life during our reception, catered by her son Christopher, and thank you all for coming.
Thank you.